and welcome to VIP Boxing's Bell to Bell podcast episode number 51. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks very much, and please leave a nice review if you can, and the same if you've downloaded on iTunes or Spotify. I'm Steve Lillis, and with me as usual, he's been here every episode with me. I think he's done one or two more episodes than me because he carried it a couple of weeks when I was AWOL somewhere. It's John Evans. You okay, John?
I am, Steve. I carry it every week.
Yeah, I know you do. You're the man. You know, you are hardcore. You are, mate. Making all that way from Chatterton to the O2 on Saturday night. That shows your dedication to duty, mate. Fair play to you for doing that, and I hope you had a good night there. Anyway.
Yeah. Do you know what? It was what it was, wasn't it? I think that's the best way you can put it. It's the boxing cliche is what it is, but that's what it was. If you like Johnny Fisher and you like Alan Babbage, you'll have gone home and had a great night.
And with you, one of your mates from Saturday night, one of Britain's top boxing journalists, I was really delighted last week. And I just mentioned it off air when I saw his name back in the Times again, because that's what, he belongs to have his name in these papers, often regular, and he should be covering every big fight. I'm not just saying that because he's a mate of mine, but he really is one of the very best out there. Ron Lewis, how are you, Ron?
I'm very good, very good.
And it was great to see your name in the Times last week, mate, yet again. And long may it continue.
Long may it continue, yeah.
So did you enjoy Saturday night, or did you enjoy John Evans' company more than the fights?
I enjoyed John Evans' company. It's always nice, especially when you get there. It's like when you get to shows at, I don't know, 4:45 or something like that, and you have someone have a good natter with at ringside, because sometimes you get worried sometimes that you get at ringside and you see all these people who seem to be about 15, and you're thinking, I don't remember anyone anymore, because everyone I know usually turns up at like 8 o'clock.
You know what?
A good chat with John on Saturday, and a good chat with I had a good sit down and chat with Bunsey, actually, who haven't a proper sit there, because he's always running around everywhere doing things. So it was a good night.
You know what? We said something there, Ron, and all the years I've known you since the early 90s covering fights, one thing I'll always say for you, and I can say this for myself, and I know I can say this for John, you've never been a journalist who's turned up at 8 o'clock at night before the main event in Vegas or ringside in this country. That's one thing no one can ever accuse you of. You're usually there very, very early, aren't you?
Well, why not? What else are you going to do? It's like, there's boxing to be watched. You watch your boxing, don't you? That's and again, that's the only way. It's what you try and get across to people. It's like, people sometimes ask you as a young journalist, what's the most important thing to do? And I would say the most important thing is to listen. Yeah. And the second most important thing is to watch a lot of boxing, because whether it's going to amateur shows, watching the worlds that are on at the moment, in Belgrade. That is where you're going to get your knowledge from, and it's by listening to people and doing that. It's not by having a massive opinion, because you sort of earn the right to have a bit of an opinion, and you're better off just listening to people and learning, getting your knowledge from other people, and also, as I say, watch a lot of boxing.
Watching that.
And that means turning up at 5 o'clock to watch the undercard fighters, because the undercard fighters are today and the main events are tomorrow, and the amateur stars of today are the undercard fighters of tomorrow, who will be the further down the road.
And you being there at 5 o'clock, you get to know these younger fighters. They get to know your face, and hence the relationship for later in life when they're fighting in big titles, and some of them even abroad with you. And you've been there since day one.
Yeah. A bit like Luke Campbell when you're watching him in 2008 or 2007 or something like that. And Joshua, I was out in Baku with him at the World Champs.
Was you? I didn't know you was there. 2011. Were you there when he got his silver? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I remember I was chatting to him in the air. It's the one thing I'm a terrible one for. I always hate doing selfies. I will never do it. It's that natural thing as a journalist. You think you don't go and ask for autographs. I think I've only had 2 things ever signed. Joe signed a poster out when he fought in Vegas, and I got him to put a joke on it. And I had Joe Calzaghe, and I had, but generally I don't. And I remember we sat in the airport, and I was sat with Luke Campbell and Joshua on the plane went to leave Baku Airport, which I'm sure is now very nice. But back in 2011, it was a bit, run of the mill as an airport. And I was thinking, I should have a selfie. These two people just got silver medal at the world champs. I should do that. And I never did. And of course, 12 months later, they're both Olympic champions.
So the rest is history.
It seems to be the thing to do these days, doesn't it, at ringside for the... God, I can call them the youngsters these days. They pose for photographs with everybody, don't they? If you don't watch a lot of the fights, if you don't make any notes, if you don't seem to take much notice, you go and get the photographs and then record the press conference.
You know what?
Changed from when I started doing it.
We are saying like old men now.
I know we are old men, but but before we kick on, the one that does me, and Buncey backed me up on this, it's been my bugbear for years. And when people have a selfie with boxers, they've never had a fight in their life, and they take a boxing pose or do that. That's mine. Anyway, we're going to
if you were getting your photographs up with Tiger Woods, you wouldn't pose mid backswing.
Well,
would you?
My mum always say, if you ask David Beckham for a picture, you wouldn't pretend you were taking a corner or a right-footed free kick and hitting it in the top bin at Old Trafford like he did against Greece in 2001 when that mad qualifier that was the anniversary of recently. But what we'll do, we better crack on. Thanks again for coming on, Ron. You were a great guest last time. I'm sure you will be again. You know how it works. 3 minutes each topic. At the end of 3 minutes, John rings his bell. And John, have you got your stopwatch ready? Because
we're ready to go.
Ron's going to have a chat about fans for round one. Away you go, Ron.
It's not really a thing about fans. It's the thing about partisan sides people draw on, especially on social media. It's people who call themselves boxing fans who don't seem to want to watch fights. You've seen a lot of it recently. Sorry, people getting in sides like, say, going back Mayweather and Pacquiao, and now you get it with Fury and Joshua, and you get a lot of people after the fight the other day. We don't want to see Fury v Joshua now. We don't want to see it. We know what's going to happen. That's a foregone conclusion. And I think, who doesn't want to see that? It's a great Fury box again. Would you rather not watch Fury fight Dillian White? Fury and Dillian White's a good fight. That's a good fight. Totally different style. And who doesn't want to watch Fury v Usyk or something like that? There are great fights out there, but people seem to think, oh no, they'd rather declare at that. And let's not watch boxing anymore. Let's not watch high-class heavyweight boxing. What we have now is Fury has elevated the division to a very good level now, and all the others are essentially contenders. But there are some good fights out there. Even you got people like Joe Joyce coming through and that sort of thing, and these could all be in big, exciting fights that will really push boxing forward. But some people seem to think, oh no, we don't want that now because Joshua was beaten by Usyk, and someone very nicely the other day actually put on Twitter a thing I'd actually done from 2011 saying Usyk could really be a big heavyweight star. And that was 10 years ago. And it's very nice for him to find that and stick that up. But that wasn't a shock. I mean, it was a shock, obviously, that Joshua lost because he was at home and everything like that. But, Usyk is that level of performer. And Usyk against Fury, Joshua against Fury, White against Fury, they're all great fights. And they could set up a proper good 3 or 4 years of heavyweight boxing, which will be very exciting. And whoever doesn't want that to happen, I'm gobsmacked. Yeah. I expected the bell to go by now.
The worst ones are the fans that take sides on TV promoters and side with that, or the fans that become accountants as if they're paying these guys with their own money and be pat guys on the back for not taking fights because we're not getting the money they think they should deserve. It. I think it's all insane, to be honest.
It's as if they're making the money themselves. Oh, he shouldn't do that. Why should he? Because we're fans and we want to see fights.
Yeah.
You talk about this. It's down to social media again. You talk about the promoters going a bit away from it. I saw people arguing yesterday on Twitter about the Zone versus Box Nation. Why? Just embrace both what Box Nation did for all those years. How it managed to survive and what the Zone's trying to do now. Just embrace both and enjoy both. Don't put them against each other. Round two, over to you, John, and that's someone in the 140-pound division, I believe.
Yeah, I think we should give a shout out to Jose Zepeda. 6.5 years since he dislocated his shoulder at the Velodrome when he fought Terry Flanagan. And it was a bad dislocation, apparently. He was screaming in agony in the hospital hours later on his own. So a terrible situation for him to be in. I suppose, and then he went through like a patch in the wilderness where he
marking time
lost
fights.
His confidence, he lost his self-belief, he was fighting no names, he wasn't doing well. And I spoke to him in that period. And if you told me that Zepeda would have had it in him, had the self-belief and had the confidence to push Ramirez to the wire and come through that fight he had with Ivan Baranchyk, which was just an incredible war, wasn't it? If you told me that he would have had it in him to get through that part of his career, get himself up off the floor to beat those caliber fighters, I wouldn't have believed you at the time. I think he deserves a real pat on the back for doing this. That natural power he's always had, he's coming to a fore again. He scored a fantastic knockout last weekend. And he looks like that confidence is coming back to him. And maybe, just maybe, I think he's still got a little bit of a way to go. He might become that fighter that Golden Boy were really hyping all those years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think once Taylor and Catchall sort themselves out with this unification, we might get some belts. You know, the division could become fractured then, especially if Taylor wins. I think he'll move up. And then he's got to be in the world title shake-up. You know, him versus Prograis, Arnold Barbosa's unbeaten. But what worries me, he's 32 now and coming up 12 years as a pro. That's what my worry about. He's not going to have longevity as a world champion.
He's looking better than ever, though.
It's still a long time about, John. You know, it's like he can win it, but I don't think he's got the longevity.
Yeah.
I mean, he is. You know, it's interesting. You know, Zepeda's one of those guys who's almost been happy to actually do it the really hard way. I mean, obviously that's the only kind of option he's had, but you know, it's almost like it's amazing. A guy who lost at the Velodrome, you know, came over here, was a bit hyped, went back. I mean, obviously the method of the defeat was you know, disappointing for him, but to actually rebuild yourself and do that over so many years is you know, fair play to him. I mean, yeah, and the dedication and professionalism that's got to do that is remarkable, really. You know, especially in the sport these days when it's like people get written off so quickly, and you know, it was great to see, and it's great to see. And let's also go back to TV. It's great to see it was got shown over here as well.
It was. His shoulder apparently still comes out to this day. It was that badly dislocated. You know, he'll be in the gym sparring, and his shoulder will come out. So that's something else he's had to put up with and got through it. And fair play to Zepeda. You know, for someone who was hyped as a glamour boy, he's done it the hard way.
Yeah. Round 3. Well, ironically, it's about underrated boxers, and we've just discussed one there, Jose Zepeda. You know, a very close loss to Ramirez, and of course the loss to Terry Flanagan when we don't know what would have happened in that fight. There's an underrated boxer. But I saw a tweet yesterday from someone I'm not the biggest fan of, Mike Coppinger, and he was praising Zepeda as one of these underrated fighters, and it got me thinking about underrated fighters, who there are. And you know, a couple of names I don't see given enough praise by the, you know, maybe the new age boxing fan that's coming along through, you know, and we all welcome these fans. I'm seeing people like Larry Holmes not getting credit from these people, Vitaly Klitschko, and I go back to, you know, underrated trilogies. Like, imagine what Dennis Andrews against Jeff Harding would have been in this day and age. And, you know, I think also another great underrated fight now, Marios Brados, you know, only lost it. Was it 36, 37 fights, was the close one against Usyk. Just the underrated fight. I just think it'd be great to get them the opinion of you guys. What do you who you got out there, Ron, as underrated?
Oh, now put me on the spot. Of the sort of current crop, I mean, I don't know. I think I mean, you flip this around in a way, you know, for underrated fighters, there are overrated fighters, and they kind of hog the limelight, don't you? So it's always, you know, I did a big rant the other day on Boxing Scene about how meaningless pound for pound lists are.
Yeah,
you get bullied into the same kind of people as well. I remember when Spence came through, Errol Spence sort of came through, and suddenly people rating him like 3 or 4 on their pound for pound. I think, why? Part of the fact he's American. I mean, I think, you know, you're looking at, you know, vast amounts of underrated fighters. You know, you go to the Far East, and you know, unless you're a Inui and you get through and you make it. I think Murata might be an underrated fighter. I'm going to talk about him in a bit, but I think he's done really well, and that's a really interesting fight he's got coming up. I mean, I don't know, would Beterbiev be an underrated fighter? I think he's like the best 2 or 3 fighters in the world. And, but he isn't spoken about like that, and incredibly exciting. But, it's the way of the world, especially the way of social media. The power of social media forces you to sort of, these are the people you should be talking about. And the pool becomes suddenly very small when in sport, especially in Britain at the moment, when we got essentially 3 big broadcasters in broadcasters, it was in BT, Sky, and now DAZN. The talent pool's getting spread so wide, there's a lot to pick from.
Hang on. 3 minutes.
Over to you, Ron, for your final round. And you gave us a hint towards what you're going to be talking about. One of them's in action this weekend.
And this weekend, Canelo talking about overrated fighters. And I don't think he's an overrated fighter. I think he's a fabulous fighter. But at the same time, let's, what gets passed over in history? Because again, history gets rewritten. And the history of Canelo has greatly been rewritten around his relationship with Gennady Golovkin. And the perceived wisdom, as they like to say at this stage, is, the first one was close and he put it right in the second one. And now he's moved on from that. And there's no point having the fight because it beat him easily this time. So who wants to see that, as some people would tell you? Well, I'd want to see it. Let's face it, I'd want to see that. Because for starters, the first one was an absolute robbery. And it was a terrible decision, and Golovkin won clearly. The second one, I remember I was at the first one, I didn't go to the second one, but our friend Barry Jones was very strong that he thought that Golovkin won. I thought it was a tight fight. I had no great problem with a narrow decision there. But after that, you should be looking for fight number 3. And they seem to have pushed that down the line in the hope that Golovkin gets older and older and older. And when, would the Caleb Plant fight be better next year? It's great to see titles getting unified. I always love that. But at the same time, I think he's got unfinished business with Golovkin. And, Golovkin has a big fight with Murata, which is, it's a tough fight. I think Murata's a good fighter in where it looks like a couple of days before New Year's Day. And, but I'd still like to see that third fight. Golovkin's one of my favourite fighters the last 10 years, personality-wise as well as fighting style-way. And again, a fighter who went up the hard way. Went through Germany, all those fights he had in Germany, everyone ran away from him. He had to do his time before he got his break, and he is owed a last fight with Canelo to put his case across in that fight.
My only worry is that if we do the third fight, it's going to be £8 too much for Golovkin and probably 2 years. I think Canelo just looks like a tank at 168, doesn't he? And Golovkin is a middleweight. And I just hope that if he doesn't get the third fight he should have had 2 years ago, but it's at the wrong time, the wrong weight, and the times of the careers are just completely wrong. But I agree with you. I thought Golovkin won the first, the second, toss of a coin, and it was a natural trilogy, wasn't it? And we just never got it.
I don't think we're going to see it, because I think if he beats Caleb Plant, I just think he'll move on, go up to light heavyweight. You can see him fighting Bivol or someone in the first half of next year. That's where I think he'll go, Canelo.
Yeah.
Round 5, and over to you, John, for your final round.
Yeah, it's not one of our favourite topics, these YouTubers, but it's intrigued me that the desperation Tommy Fury showed in getting this fight with Jake Paul. I think this is a massive lose-lose fight, this, for Tommy Fury. It's actually a good fight on paper, and I'm going to give credit for Jake Paul for moving quicker, fighting more regularly, and seemingly having more ambition than a lot of these youngsters who are coming through. This is a proper fight between two young guys. I think it's a fight Tommy Fury can lose, basing it on past performances. And can you imagine if Fury loses to a YouTuber? Your career's done, and that Fury name, I just think it's a bit of a strange fight to take. I assume he's comfortably well off. The family obviously are. It just seems a bizarre decision to make for something which could end up being an absolute nightmare for him.
And he has to call himself Tommy Fumbles for a year. What was interesting was a LinkedIn post from the lawyer who did the contracts here, Stephen Heath, and he said it's the most interesting contract he's ever dealt with in 25 years of boxing. But you know what? I think Tommy's taking it for the money. Where else is he going £1 million in his career? I get what you say about the lose-lose. That's the reason why I think he's taking it. He's going to earn $1 million. And if he wins, there'll be some sort of novelty fights out for him. If not, he's going to be on that. What's going to have to happen in his career for him to earn that sort of money? How many hard fights that he's unlikely to get through? What do you think, Ron?
I think, I mean, you know, I've never been sold on Tommy Fury at all. I mean, the problem is, obviously, he's got this name, and, you know, let's face it, if his surname wasn't Fury, would there be any sort of like thought about, oh, what happens if he loses? Of course not, because I've always been wary of the guys he's been put in with have all got a naught next to wins. Now, even Freddie Flintoff, they found a guy for him with a 2-0 record, right? If there was any ambition with the matchmaking, they would find someone somewhere from Latvia or wherever who had wins on their record, but they haven't. They went persistently with guys who have never won fights. And that strikes me that they're not confident that he beats anyone else. Yeah. And, you know, so I mean, realistically, I'll go along with you, Steve. I think where else are you going to make this money? You know, it worries me, that fight where he suddenly went up a stone and a half for one fight because he's been doing loads of weights and that sort of thing. And yeah, obviously he's got his fans, and people will turn around and say everyone has this at the start of their career. And it's like, yes, but they don't, because there's some progression normally. There's normally, like, you might start off with people who are just journeyman, but he's sort of gone beyond that, learn from journeyman, to have just guys who are in the other corner for him to knock over. And it's all built to this fight. I think the entire career has been actually built towards this fight rather than this being a strange sideline.
Yeah.
Sixth and final round there. You did ring the bell there, John, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Ron was throwing them punches after the bell there. I tell you, super lightweight boxer tournament Saturday night at Liverpool. But basically, it's a prize fighter, isn't it? But they called it the boxer tournament. You know what? I'm quite looking forward to it. I don't know how well you know them, John. I think, Ron, I think John would have seen a lot of these guys. Got 4 VIP boxers in there. I think Kane Gardner of them's got the best of the chances. Also, Tom Farrell, Nathan Bennett, and Sean Masher Dodds. A lot of people tell me that Corey Gibbs, who had some very solid amateur credentials, spent some time on Team GB, is the man to beat. Well, all I know is I don't know who's good. Got any real confidence of tipping anyone. I just know I wouldn't want to fight Ben Fields first fight up.
No, Ben Fields is a right handful, isn't he? A lot of these guys have all fought each other as well, so he's previous there. But yeah, Ben Fields is an absolute nightmare over 3 rounds, isn't he? I just wonder if Ben Fields has got the look of a losing finalist. He'll put his all into a first 2, get to a final and run out of gas. Good friends with Tom Farrell. He's been on the show, but Tom looked pretty bad last time out. He's got it all to prove. I just wonder if Kane Gardner might be the one. You know, Kane's got that little bit of something special. He's got a little bit of quality about him. Plenty of skill. Good amateur background. Highly thought of by people like Ant Crawler. I just wonder if it could be a bit of a coming out party for Kane Gardner. But really, it's pot luck on nights like this, isn't it? Anything can happen.
Yeah. As you see it, are you a fan of prize fighters, Ronald? Do you know any?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not. Generally, not really. I mean, it is a good chance, obviously, for people to sort of a level, because it was originally set up, wasn't it, for the idea that the winner would get a big break, and it's good for that sort of point of view. I found them increasingly, when prize fights sort of carried on, increasingly difficult to predict, because essentially, again, you've got people who won them were the guys who sort of kind of fought the system. They were really good. They fiddled their way through the early rounds and kept their energy. So essentially, if you fight flat out, you're usually finished by the final. I mean, it's difficult to know, because some of these guys, obviously, like you got Masher Dodd in it and Tom Farrell. I remember him fighting the Commonwealth title and that sort of thing. But it's difficult to know what kind of form they're in, because essentially you kind of want a young, ambitious guy going upwards to go into this, and that's usually who does it. And it's not usually the sort of old guys looking for the last payday that pull it off.
Yeah, I think the winner does get some sort of contract with boxers. So you do need really a Kane Gardner or a Corey Gibbs. I think John Pegg's got, who's unbeaten in 13 to win it. You know, no disrespect to Tom, Nathan, or Sean, but they are on, whilst they still got something left to offer, they are on that home straight of their career. Whereas Ben Fields is, you know, one, and that, he might not be on the home straight, but he's one of those guys who's not put in to win and you know, he's one of those. He's a gatekeeper, isn't he, Ben?
He's beat most of the guys in this.
Yeah.
So he's turned them all over 4 rounds. So he's beat Nathan Bennett. He's beat Ken Gardner.
One on Leah. Yeah.
Ben Fields has got the form going into it. But the first prize fighters were fantastic, weren't they?
Yeah.
You remember the first heavyweight one where everyone just took the brains out and banged up, wasn't it, all night? But then they started realizing that's not the way to do it. And well, Audley Harrison's the king of prize fighters.
And I said there was a guy who won one in Wolverhampton. I was thinking of when Ron referred to how they win it. You know, they leave a bit in it. And the guy's name has escaped me. It was a British Asian from Leeds, a tall welterweight, really nice kid as well. And his name escapes me. Who won one of them in Wolverhampton, and he didn't lose a second of any round in the 9 rounds he boxed that night, and he wasn't even sweating at the end. And the poor, I'm so sorry, embarrassed. I can't recall his name.
I can't remember Martin Murray as well. Martin Murray's big break was winning a prize fight.
Yeah, he had that great fight with the guy from Peterborough, Cello Render.
Yeah.
I think we've gone over our 3 minutes there.
Don't worry.
Well, fellas, been a pleasure having you on, Ron, tonight. A real college of knowledge when it comes to boxing, mate. You make your points very, very nicely indeed, without being forceful with it, you know. And you somebody you listen to other opinions. You're a proper journalist, John Evans. You're a proper everything. Thanks everyone else for listening. You've all been gentlemen tonight. You two have both been gentlemen tonight. Thanks very much, fellas.
Excellent. Love to see you, mate.
For all boxing info, news and latest interviews, amateur and pro, across the north, click and subscribe. VIP Boxing Promotions. Also Twitter, Instagram and Facebook.